When determining how complex a Rube Goldberg machine is, we're not necessarily concerned with its overall size, but rather the number of interactions it takes in order to solve that final task. For example, let's take a look at the number of links in the chain, or the number of pieces it takes in order to make up a puzzle. The official Rube Goldberg terminology for each of these unique interactions is known as a step. No, not these kind of steps. The reason we don't care about the overall scale is because Rube Goldberg machine steps come in all shapes and sizes. For example, let's take the board game Mousetrap. This game has over 12 steps in order to solve the task of catching the mice. However, all of this action happens within a 1 square foot area. This portable contraption, a Rube Goldberg machine designed to hand out my business cards at events, is over 5 feet long, yet has only 2 more steps than the board game Mousetrap. One of my Guinness World Records is for a Rube Goldberg machine that solved the simple task of popping a balloon in 300 steps. Yep, you heard me right, 300. However, that entire 300-step machine fit inside of a 6 foot tall by 6 foot wide by 6 foot long cube. I mean, not much wider than this machine in front of me. Yet, by comparison, one of the coolest machines I've ever built took an entire 1,000 square foot warehouse, but only had 63 steps in total from start to finish. So, if the size of a step doesn't matter, well then, how do we accurately determine what a step is? I'm glad you asked. As the National Contest Director at the Rube Goldberg Institute and author of the rule books we all use, I can confirm that the correct definition is the transfer of energy from one object to the next, not the transfer of motion. That's a common misconception. It's that transfer of energy from one object to the next that correctly counts. Why is that distinction specifically important? Well, let's take a closer look using a marble run and some dominoes. If we were to count it as each transfer of motion, then every drop or change in direction the marble takes would count as a step. I think we can all agree that a marble run is not a Rube Goldberg machine. Now, if you haven't already, check out my video defining what the key components of a Rube Goldberg machine actually are. Similarly, with dominoes, if I were to set up 1,000 dominoes in a row, should this count as 1,000 steps in a Rube Goldberg machine? No, of course not. Remember, my Guinness World Record is for 300 steps, and let me tell you, we did not include a single domino. In a Rube Goldberg machine, regardless if you have 5 dominoes or 10,000 dominoes, the whole topple sequence only counts as one single step. Your dominoes could be mattresses, boogie boards, textbooks, foam blocks, or any combination of everyday objects. The topple still collectively only counts as a single step. All this setup work to only count as one single step? It just really doesn't seem worth it, does it? Dominoes in particular are incredibly troublesome to set up. They cause teams and builders more frustration than any other single step in a Rube Goldberg machine. Screwed up so royally I've set off an alarm. Run! It wasn't us, I promise. Run away!
What did you do?
I used dominoes. I used dominoes. The building did not enjoy that. But hey, look. I know most of you are still going to want to incorporate some sort of marble run or domino topple in your designs. I mean, I've given you fair warning. The building just gave us plenty of warning right there. My advice, just be careful. Let's return to the board game Mousetrap. I'm going to teach you exactly how I counted each of the 12 transfers of energy in this machine. To start, a human is always going to be included in the first step. For example, Zach turns the crank handle attached to the gear. As the handle and the vertical gear are connected together, they're the same element and therefore the same step. Whether a human presses a button, dials a phone to cause another phone to ring and vibrate down a ramp, or even if your dog goes for a bone, which pulls a string, that external interaction counts as the initial first step. Next in Mousetrap, this vertical gear spinning causes this horizontal gear to rotate. Because it's not a sequence of multiple gears and this horizontal gear has its own longer edge, it does count as a separate step because of its own unique purpose. If it simply spun into another gear, then that all would count as collectively one step. However, as this horizontal gear rotates, it causes this stop sign to swing back until it swings forward rapidly, hitting this boot. As the stop sign swings, the boot kicks the bucket, causing the bucket to collide and topple over. The tipped over bucket releases the ball to travel down the tracks. These are indeed two separate steps, as the ball and the bucket are two separate objects. However, you don't count the various ball run paths, such as the stairs or the chute, because they are not the physical objects causing the transfer of energy. The rolling ball continues until it collides with that vertical rod. That shaking rod causes the ball above that's perched on there to then fall into the bathtub and then the seesaw below. Again, the ball dropping from the platform into the bathtub is not a separate step, as the ball itself is the object transferring the energy. The ball is going to fall, causing the seesaw to flip sides. Seesaw flipping throws the diver into the air. Notice the two separate steps, as the seesaw and the diver are two separate objects. The diver lands into the bathtub, causing the entire bathtub holding platform to shake. The bathtub shaking causes the cage to release from the perch, dropping down until it reaches the ground, simultaneously trapping the mice and completing the task of becoming a ridiculously complicated mousetrap. For the Rube Goldberg Machine Contest and the National Invention Convention, depending on your division level, the machines must have a minimum of either 10, 15, or 20 steps. After seeing the 12 steps it takes just to solve the board game Mousetrap, if it works properly, incorporating 12 steps into your machine doesn't seem that bad, right? While many people initially worry that they'll have too few of steps, in reality, what often happens is that a machine shows up to competition with too many. Yes, you heard that right. Straight away, I'll make mention that technically, there's no set maximum number of steps you must incorporate into your machine. However, the more steps you include does not automatically mean that yours is a better Rube Goldberg. My 300-step Guinness World Record machine I mentioned earlier was certainly guilty of this. While our team packed an absolute ton of steps into our design, it became very difficult to see every interaction and for the audiences to follow the flow, which ultimately resulted in a lower score from the judges. Even though we shattered a Guinness record, we ended up losing the competition that year because of that. Instead of aiming for a higher step count, greater emphasis should be placed on following my 3 tips for success. Number 1, larger, more visual steps. A bystander standing around 8 to 10 feet away should be able to follow the flow and understand most, if not everything, of what happens in your contraption. Think using a Tonka truck instead of a Hot Wheels car, or replacing marbles with something larger, like a bowling ball or basketball. Number 2, make it enjoyable to watch. You're not just putting on a show for the judges, but also the audience, your friends, and your family. Be funny, do something creative, bring the spirit of Rube to life with your contraption. take a step back and really watch your machine in action. Too often we get wrapped up in the design and forget to look at our own work with an outsider's perspective. What may seem obvious to you may not make sense to your audience. Again, your machine is supposed to be entertaining to watch. And number 3, keep your step count modest. If you find that you've gone over 125 steps, then maybe reconsider my tips. Typically, machines only have around 40 to 80 steps in contest, and they tend to do the best. Rube himself never actually built a machine or designed one with more than 26 steps. Counting steps can indeed be a little tricky, but thankfully, I'm here to help. Starting October 2023, on the first Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern Time Zone, I'll be holding live Q&A sessions right here on my YouTube channel, Zach's Contraptions. Feel free to stop by and ask me questions regarding your machine builds, step counts, rulebook clarifications, or to chat about anything Rube Goldberg related. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and just stay tuned for all of my exciting and mind-boggling content. Until then, keep those gears turning.